How McLaren's upgrades helped them beat Mercedes in Silverstone. It's crunch time for F1 mechanics and teams as the summer break grows nearer, which signals the last bit of upgrades for the 2023 season's cars. It's usually by autumn that the F1 teams are turning their attention to their next year's challenges, but the summer upgrades can prove extremely useful for the teams designing direction for the next year, as long as improve their results the current year. That's exactly what happened with McLaren, who started the season in poor form, but since their Austria upgrades has had a U-turn in performance, managing a return to the podium in Silverstone. McLaren's rocket ship upgrades, as McLaren driver Oscar Piastri called them, are a product of hard work in the factory and resulted in them leapfrogging their engine suppliers Mercedes in the pecking order, who not long before had important upgrades of their own. But while Mercedes have grown a bit stale after their brief resurgence, McLaren seems to have the better car now with the upgrades, and today's video will dig deep into these changes that give McLaren the upper hand in both Austria and Silverstone. First of all, the team hinted earlier in the season a potential problem with the design of their floor, perhaps the most important part of the ground effect cars, and with these upgrades they attempted to resolve this issue and offer their car more aerodynamic stability and downforce without having to deal with drag. The big McLaren upgrades were planned for Silverstone but were brought forward to the Red Bull Ring, a track traditionally suited to McLaren. The team's senior driver, Lando Norris, was the first to get his hands on some of the new upgrades, but was cautious in predicting their success, citing that they wouldn't make them suddenly the fastest midfield team. Norris's Austria upgrades developed major alterations in the side pods and bodywork, which led to a new engine cover as well. Extra upgrades also included a new mirror and halo design in an effort to improve the airflow distributed to the rear of the car, therefore producing more downforce. As team principal and longtime F1 engineer Andrea Seidel said back then, those were about 50% of the upgrades that McLaren were anticipating, with another 25% coming in Silverstone. They were already proved to be successful, with Norris finishing a strong fourth in the main race in Austria, while Piastri without them struggled in the rear of the grid. At Silverstone, Piastri also got the upgrades and his performance improved significantly too. Norris had additional upgrades in his front wing and rear suspension. Both McLarens were in the top three in qualifying, and in the race Norris managed the team's first podium of the year, while Piastri was fourth. As for the reason that McLaren's upgrades are so powerful, Stella considered a personnel change to be the important factor. Certainly there's been quite a lot of reorganization at McLaren. His comments were meant for the disposal of technical director James Key and the signings of David Sanchez and Rob Marshall from Ferrari and Red Bull respectively. As he concluded, "We see this in the development rate that you can measure, what is called in Formula One teams the aerodynamic tracker. It does seem to have taken a good gradient upwards, so I would say it's mainly the result of the evolution of the team that we have kicked off a few months ago." As for Mercedes, they obviously didn't like to be overtaken by yet another of their engine partners after Aston Martin in the pecking order, with both Lewis Hamilton and Toto Wolff hinting that McLaren's upgrades were highly inspired by Red Bull's dominant RB19. Hamilton praised his ex-team, but at the same time, he spotted the big Red Bull influence. If you just put it alongside a Red Bull, it looks very similar down the side, so it's working. Toto Wolff, Mercedes boss, supported his driver's claims by stating, "I think from what you see from the outside, which is obviously only half the information, the car looks like a Red Bull," he said, before further giving the reason why teams try to imitate Red Bull. "I think each of us had bodyworks that were perfectly good in the tunnel, and it didn't come out in performance, so you've got to leave no stone unturned and maybe look at it again because another team just found a second in performance." The rest of McLaren's upgrades were meant to arrive in Hungary, but after the success of these initial upgrades and the frenetic work being put on the factory, Stella said that the upgrades will be spread into various future races. Let us know in the comments below, what are your thoughts about McLaren's performance gains, and should the other teams try to look at Red Bull for influence with their own upgrades? If you're new here and you like the content, make sure to like, share and subscribe to the channel to never miss an F1 design upgrade.